like creature very easily. The very shock, the trauma of going through that and then seeing an organism, what they look like, very easily you would assign something of a familiarity again to it, which would be a reptilian-type organism. And the so-called praying mantis variety we're going to deal with coming up as well, it's the same thing, but it's an assignment of a label of where the person's focus is during the time of an abduction or otherwise meeting one of these creatures. Now, from the time that you move from the 45 to a 52, the problems, the three pathologies, I still believe there are two, and I'll go into the reasons, but the three pathologies under which we were attempting to operate, they gradually become more and more prevalent from the 45s up to the 52s. And so the 45s, if you would encounter one, will stand slightly taller than if you would encounter a 52, because there's a loss of muscle function in the 52s. So they have difficulty standing up. They limp a lot. They're bent over. Yes. And the prevalence of the CSA and CSB type cocaine involvement causes them to actually lurch forward a little bit and even hold their arms forward a little bit, and that gives the praying mantis sort of a appearance that many of the people that have undergone abductions have related, and rightfully so. They are relating an actual phenomenon, and they ought to be treated with that degree of consideration. Level 3 is where the humans and the animals are cared for and stored. There are 3 residential bay units, here, here, and here. And I've got the blow-off shafts as if coming up above it, off and leading out. I don't know what the exact shapes of the tubes are and how they would meet with each other. When I was staying in there, I stayed in residential bay 1, unit 2, which is this little suite. And what they are is they're basically studio apartments. And when I was staying there voluntarily and involuntarily, I stayed there in between overnight in 94. Stayed there in 96, if I'm recalling correctly. And then I was there for a while in 2001, and that's for a very short period of time in 2001. But the majority of the time I spent there was in 99. The basic procedure, if you will, we would meet on the level 4 in the briefing room, and if we had samples which needed to be removed from the J-rod, the A and B team would be picked. The A team is the actual person who does the introduction into the clean sphere with a single helper standing behind him until he gets into the gantry. And the B team handles anything else which is required on the floor at the time. It's a backup team. If I was, for instance, picked to do the introduction, which I had several, I would then proceed straight down the hallway, past all of the biocontainment levels, and down in the elevator to the floor, and walk down the stairs to the actual floor where the clean sphere would be, either being raised up or already being positioned. There was a physician and a nurse who would check me out, do a general evaluation on me, breathe in, breathe out. And
is this at the clean sphere, or is this
right around the corner from it?
In a separate room?
Yes, right around the corner to the right. And then you would walk out between the area which would be the overlook over the clean sphere and the wall that was actually set up with the equipment for the samples to head up. But I would be given an EKG, set up on a heart monitor. The leads would go to the equipment pack, which would be strapped around me after I was suited. I was catheterized and plugged, which was the most uncomfortable portion of the whole operation next to the helmet. They had only limited numbers of suits which were available. They're extremely expensive moon suits. Basically, we're talking not a level 4 biocontainment positive pressure suit. We're talking a spacesuit for all intents and purposes. I would be put in a special jumper, and this is after the plugging and the catheterizing. In other words, I was stripped down. And after the jumper, I would be suited. The suit had a central feature, which would wrap around my torso and be locked and zipped around my torso. Then separate legs and separate arms would be added on with swivel locks. Then I would essentially be in an entire moon suit. The boots to the moon suit didn't separate. It was part of the actual leg, which would be locked and hooked on. Then I would have the helmet locked over the top, which just looked like a bell with a halo, if you will, a heavy rubberized halo stuck up into the top of the bell. And I would be checked out with with pressure. I'd be pressurized. After that worked, I would be depressurized, the helmet would be taken off, and I would have my communications gear put on, and then bell back on, relocked, and repressurized. At that point, I would be walked with my other aid person out onto the floor in front of the clean sphere. But then I could already see the J-rod over in the corner, and we were giving each other mental waves at the time. I should probably explain that we were not supposed to be communicating whatsoever, but as soon as I got out on the floor near the clean sphere, we were in communication with one another. And
really unknown to
the crew.
the crew. But
I would be then walked up the gantry, which was placed in position to an interlock device on the side of the clean sphere, and walked up to the top and put into the little room almost. It's almost like a closet. There I would then hook up to the secondary oxygen system, which was able to be swiveled in a beveled area at the front of the gantry, so that when I entered into the clean sphere, I was actually hooked to the central portion of the gantry area. I would pressurize myself up, and when I was comfortable with the oxygen flow, the atmospheric flow, I would then decouple myself from the external device that I walked in with. Why we had to pressurize up before getting into the gantry was because if there was a failure of the system before I would be hooked in on the inside of the clean sphere, that I could potentially have nothing to breathe until they could get me out, so I could suffocate. So that's why I was previously hosed up, as they called it. And they joked, there was jokes that was going on. They were going on the floor. You know, who gets hosed over tonight? There were those sort of jokes, and that's what we called it when we actually rotated the drum inside. Is we would say, okay, I'm hosed over. That's what the joke was on the floor. So we would then pressurize up the atmosphere on the inside of the gantry, and then the door would be opened. I would then rotate the drum over, and I would manually close the door from top to bottom. It was a rotating, actually opened this way, not sideways. And I would manually close the door, and then they would check to make sure that the interlock pressure in that gantry was made normal, that there was no leaking. Once I was introduced into the clean sphere, I would have my equipment with me, and there was a secondary hose which came out of the bottom by the gantry area, but it was fixed as part of the clean sphere, that the B unit would then be hooking up to transfer the samples up to the 3rd floor. It wouldn't go initially up to the 4th floor where you would run the samples. They would go up to the 3rd floor where the culture was actually held. And then they would be run back down to the 4th floor when we were working in the biocontainment laboratories.
Well, one thing that Mark asked about is how did that tissue, is it like a module that goes through the, I mean, otherwise it would contaminate the whole.
I will explain. Yeah, no.
You really want to know.
I'll fully explain it. Let me continue along with the protocol, and then I'll get to the pins system. We would then hook the back of the pins tube, which was a port, if you will, to our pin system, our aspirative avulsion system. That acted as the drawing pressure for the needle. The next thing that I was supposed to do immediately after that was shuffle 2 steps to my right, and I was to raise my right hand. At the same time, projected as a teleprompter into the clean sphere's glass was a picture of a human being holding his hand up, and Sigma-approved symbols that this was a message of friendship. While I would go through this, I went through it the first time, and as I did it the first time, he asked me, "Why are you doing that?" Now, I was not able to verbally answer him, but I looked at him, and I said, "Because I'm told to, in here." And he would go like that. He was actually laughing. That was his way of laughing. After the J-Rod would accept the offer for friendship, which would be his hand being raised up, and finally, it almost got to the point where you'd go, you have to know his behavior to know how flippant he was being, because he had very controlled behaviors. And he would raise his little 4 digits up, and then I would be permitted then to walk from my position to him and carry out my duties, which he had been previously told what the duties were for that particular introduction. The bottom line is, as I was walking toward him, he was saying, "So you're going to remove sample from right appendage?" And I'd say, "Yes, sir." And while we were getting to know each other, he told me his private name, and I told him my name, and he wanted to learn about me, and he showed me a little bit about his growing up in Reticulum, and the beanie line came up because he wanted to know some things from my childhood, and I recalled a favorite cartoon, which was Cecil, the C6 sea serpent, and Beanie Boy. And so I replayed a little bit for him in my head what I remembered from one of the episodes with Cecil yelling, "I'm coming, Beanie Boy," to help Beanie out. And so he started calling me BNE because he separated his words that way, naturally, from his actual learning of English from us. So he called me BNE most of the time. He didn't call me Dan or Danny or my childhood nickname all the way up to now, Boo Boo. He didn't. I told him those things, but I shared those things with him, but he called me BNE. And part of the reason why he, I think, associated with me as BNE is because the B team, when the B team was on the floor, Polly was there, and I looked over my shoulder one time, and Polly used to wear a hat with a beanie, and I actually have the propeller hat from him. He subsequently passed away during an accident up at the facility. But anyway, I looked over my shoulder, and he said, "Beanie that." And I looked over my shoulder, and I told him no, because Polly